Hello and welcome back to Clockwork Noodles, the channel where Becca is nearly at the end of this season, guys. There's only a few episodes here and there now of all the seasons that are airing. We don't have long left. But I have some great news. I have finally scheduled my spring wrap-up of 2021. In this video, I named my top 3. I finally did it. I finally got down and labelled my top 3 anime of this season. And I tell you guys what's coming your way next season and what we're going to be breaking down on the channel. And I finally picked my 4 for that as well. It took a while to do it, but it's finally here. So make sure you are subscribed or you will miss out on this. This is scheduled, but for the life of me, I can't remember what exact date. All I know is it's going out sometime next week, and I can't wait to share with you guys my thoughts on the season. There is a Discord channel too if you want to get a notification to your phone whenever videos go up on the channel. Let's talk about episode 10 because Zombieland Saga is starting to gear up for its finale, and I think it's going to be one hell of a finale because everything's starting to come together. All of those little loose ends, all of those plot lines that we've established this season are starting to come together, and I think it's all going to be an amalgamation when it comes to the final 2 episodes. So we have 2 episodes left. We actually start in the past. I got very confused for a second but figured it out. So we start before that very fateful show, the EFS show, which ended up putting them horrifically into debt and also ended up plunging the zombies into their darkest period. Even during the announcement of the big show, I was always against the stadium show, not just because that's where she died, but because she also realised that it was just jumping too soon. We do get confirmation that Sakura is the only zombie here who isn't really a legend. We do know this because her story started and then was cruelly taken away theoretically same day. I think she gets her letter and then she dies the same day. But that is the confirmation that she's the only one who hasn't really had a chance to make a name for herself. So perhaps with the afterlife she's able to do so. But we do have to question the reckless management of Kotaro this episode because Kotaro is the one at this point who was really pulling for EFS without putting any effort in, seemingly not making any effort to advertise, not really doing anything, and it did seem like we were trying to bite off more than we can chew. We are introduced to Kotaro's writing process where even Ai's words started to haunt him a little bit as he's trying to write a song, but he can visualise the fact that maybe this wasn't the correct idea, which starts to unnerve him. Because these are words that ended up sticking with him before that fateful show. But it was a show that was forever doomed to fail, and we entered this season ahead after it had already failed, and we didn't really have any details for it, but we finally get the POV we wanted, just seeing how it fell down. Kotaro simply pushing way too quickly, and he also made the very interesting decision of not opening ticket sales until that very day. Interesting choice, to say the least, but he does plough on with the idea that to have a success as big to shake up Saga, it needs to be done through non-ordinary means. But indeed, this was the show that ended up throwing everybody into the big slump that started off our season. We ended up with our 20 million yen debt. Isn't until a bit later on this season where we see Tai, by very unbelievable means, wiping out that debt. During the slump, the unlikely spark ends up being Tai once again. She really is a character who is very intrinsic into our plot, but at the same time it still isn't fully awake, but is kind of awake at the same time. She hasn't got the ability to vocalize or talk to people, but she definitely has a very important role to play despite this. The fact that she is the one who eradicates the debt, but she's also the one that ends up sparking the zombies to do something about their situation. We know that Kotaro ended up going into a horrific depression at this point, so he went and turned into Eren Yeager. Tai didn't let it bother her. She wanted some squid, so she did her own makeup. Didn't look great, but she made an attempt, and she was the only one who ended up going out and coming back with some food, which ended up sparking the motivation that we can't just give up, that they have to do things for themselves. They've been too busy sat around thinking of the what's if, like we can't do our makeup, we can't do this, we can't do that, instead of trying to find a way of how can we do this, how can we do that, which is where they start to really realise that they were too reliant on Kotaro. They ended up leaving him to do everything himself, although as their manager, stuff like advertising, all of this around a show like EFS really is down to him. But it is our little segment which links the 2 seasons together. It links season 1 and season 2 nicely because this is the events that took place between the 2 seasons. It was a show that ended up putting them right at rock bottom. This entire season we've been trying to see the zombies come back from rock bottom. We've hit the lowest, and the only way you can really go when you hit the bottom is up. But it's Ty's act that ends up making them realise that we have to stop moping around, we have to get going and get trying. So that's when everybody ended up taking a job on. The girls ended up trying to climb their way out, whilst Kotaro ended up wallowing, ended up becoming more and more like Eren Yeager with his beautiful hair, and he ended up falling into his depression. Where we are quickly jumped into the present day. This confused me because it happened so quickly. I thought at the time, because we see Squidman Kotaro, I figured Squidman Kotaro was actually pre-Eren Yeager form of Kotaro before he got super depressed. It is him a year later, probably getting depressed because he thought of what was coming his way, the anniversary of that show that put them into that slump. But Squidman also ends up being a unlikely link to our reporter Arata, the man who's got his eye fixed on the zombies, who knows they are zombies, who is aware that something unsavory is going on, who's also got his eye fixed on Kotaro because Kotaro is the man tied in the middle. He is the manager, he is the one at the centre, so he is also going to be the target for where Arata ends up going a bit later on during the sequence. Kotaro is now gearing us up to our perhaps finale of this entire season, a EFS Revenge show. We're going to go back. I was worried that he hasn't learnt his lesson, but he does give a somewhat valid reasoning behind his decision. Kotaro believes that this is going to be different. This is going to be the revenge. We've had a year of the girls trying their best to be reborn, but trust Kotaro to perhaps have the most dramatic speech whilst addressing the girls ever, being so dramatic that I think he was going Super Saiyan, perhaps unlocking a quirk, one of the two, or maybe he hit a Bankai. And then it ends up being disrupted by the most cutest sneeze on the planet, which is why I really do love this voice actor. This voice actor can go overly big to really, 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 really cute. It's a fantastic show on him as he's able to pull one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, and he can bounce between different levels of energy when it comes to it. He is one of my favourite voice actors. He's fantastic at what he does. Saga's biggest revenge story. Things are about to go a little bit more downhill as Arata, our reporter, finally confronts Kotaro about the girls. And it's very interesting because he's actually got all information on all six, bar Yugiri. And I was wondering if this is because her death would have probably been covered up by the government. They would have hid the fact that there was ever a revolution and hid the fact that she was the one who ended up taking the bullet. She was a scapegoat in the end. They ended up killing somebody for the uprising that happened. So I wonder if that's the reason why he can't find any information on Yugiri. However, I don't know if he'd be able to get rid of all the information on a very famous entertainment artist from that period of time, because she was considered a legend. But it's very interesting because he actually has information on Tai. We still don't really fully know who Tai is, but he apparently knows who she is, and he's found out who Tai looks like because he believes it's lookalikes or Kotaro is making money off the dead. Kotaro ends up getting an ultimatum from Arata. Arata tells him to stop profiting from the dead. Isn't a full story, so he doesn't know the full story, but at the same time, he's on the right tracks. He's definitely on the right tracks because they are zombies. They're definitely zombies, but nobody's really profiting at this point. Kotaro announces to Arata that there will be a revenge show, where Arata then vows to stop it, which is a bit of an interesting movement on Kotaro's part. Whether Kotaro was hoping that Arata would give him a month to allow the revenge show to go through, everything now hinges on this show being a success. This is the finale for Zombieland Saga 2. It's going to end on this show. Is it going to be a big ending or is it going to be a washout ending? We are introduced back to Gramps, who we saw last episode, and we are told that he is the one who can revive the dead. I think it might be the dog. I still think it might be the dog because the dog belongs to him. But I start to question a few things. So you might be able to revive the dead, but can you reflesh them? Yugiri was the longest dead, so she's been dead for the longest amount of time, where by this point she would be skeleton. She would be a skeleton. Decomposition doesn't take as long as we're thinking it does. We're not going into it because it's quite a gruesome topic, but she really would just be bone. So how she even has a form right now is very interesting, and I'm hoping they do give us some information on this process at some point. But we finally get some information on how Kotaro met Gramps, and they met 12 years ago. And that's when Gramps told Kotaro about a prophecy and also a curse. So things start to get very interesting during this last minute segment where perhaps we've got some of our information, perhaps we've got some jigsaw pieces starting to fall into place. Kotaro isn't the guy I thought he was. So he isn't the guy from the past who looks a lot like him, but he is somewhat part of the same family, perhaps. he ended up meeting Gramps 12 years ago with his desire to make Saga great again. And then that's when Gramps told him that there was a prophecy. The prophecy was that Saga would be no more. It was going to be hit by a cataclysmic event of some kind, and then it would vanish. It would stop being Saga. Where we are told about the shrinking population. I don't know anything about Saga. I don't know a great deal about it, but I did quickly do a little run through Google just asking about the shrinking population of Saga. It is more or less linked to the old story that we're all quite familiar with, is the shrinking population of Japan. We do know it is shrinking. However, interesting enough to note that the rise of the tourists who are moving over there to live there is increasing. Perhaps that is what we're trying to focus on. Maybe there's actually a modern day link to a very important issue that this anime is trying to tackle a little bit. But it was very interesting. So again, if you guys know any more about Saga itself, the shrinking population thing I figured would be a issue for all of Japan, not so much regional, but perhaps it is. But that's when we also hear about the idea that the girls who are dead were all cursed to die. So there's a curse going on here as well. So there's something more behind why it's these 7 girls, why it's not other girls as well. Something else is going on behind the scenes. Hopefully we're going to get the answers before the season is over. But the bad omen, this cataclysmic event or whatever it is, ends up hitting us that day, that night, pretty much after they even talk about the prophecy it hit. So a bit of ironic timing here. Where we get, it looks like a hurricane, and it looks like torrential rain. I'm not quite sure what it is. But all of the lights in the area end up going out. We ended up losing power. But fate also stops Arata from sending his finished article to pretty much bring doom upon our girls. But it also plunges everybody else into darkness, and where it seemingly we get a earthquake perhaps. And next week's preview seems like perhaps Kotoru doesn't remember anything. Gonna be a bit of a chaotic one. How do we deal with the fact that Saga has just been hit by a weather phenomena? We'll call it a weather phenomena. I can't even say that word. It's a horrible word to say. A very interesting episode indeed, and I can't wait to see where we're going. We're starting to get enough pieces to see where we're going to be ending the season. I really hope we do get some more information on the zombie process, but I think now that the last 2 episodes are going to be the girls trying to get their revenge story, perhaps the stadium ends up being filled up by everybody who's affected by the power outage. Maybe they all get together and have a big concert. Perhaps that's what's going to end up being the revival of Saga, as they realize they can pull together and get through this disaster. Sometimes it takes a disaster for people to pull together and realize that things can be reborn, and that can be the trigger to something greater. So perhaps that's where it's going to go. I think Arata's probably going to end up seeing the relief work the girls do. Perhaps he's going to have a bit of a change of heart about posting and sending that email. Something's going to happen to make him stop sending it. However, I can imagine that if he did post about the girls being zombies, considering it's also the same newspaper which is posting about the Squid Man, perhaps people won't actually take it seriously. I mean, if you guys suddenly got a article online, perhaps somewhere on a newsfeed or Facebook or something like that, about your favourite band suddenly perhaps being zombies, you got to question whether you would believe it or not. Let's even if we had proof that they looked like people from the past, would you really 100% off the bat go, this is correct, they're zombies, and start panicking? Very interesting to see how people may react to this idea. Can't wait to see next week. Everything's starting to gear up now. I really do like it when we get to finales. Everything's going crazy. The next 2 episodes are going to be jam-packed. I can't wait to see how the girls are going to have their revenge. This is Zombieland Saga Revenge. We've definitely got to have a revenge somewhere down the line. The girls need to come back with a vengeance, and this is going to be their chance. So a fantastic episode. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait to see where we're going. Have a good day, guys. Make sure you're staying safe. Goodbye.